With E3 just around the corner, we definitely need to be spotlighting companies and what we need to see at E3 from these companies. Obviously, E3 is going to be a huge event, as it always is. We find out about new games, new hardware, new technology, all sorts of stuff in the world of video games. It's definitely a great time to be a video gamer when the month of June rolls around, because you're going to be learning about stuff you're going to play later this year or in the subsequent years coming up. And a few weeks ago on the channel, I did a video talking about Xbox and what I wanted to see from the Xbox and Microsoft brand at E3, and I said I was going to follow it up with a Sony and Nintendo video, and a lot of you guys have been hitting me up and saying, hey, where's the Sony and Nintendo part? Because I don't know, I kind of forgot to do them. But we are rectifying our wrongs. We are righting the wrongs today on the channel, because today on the channel, we're going to talk about Sony. I think Sony is in a pretty interesting spot when it comes to E3 2018. We know some things about them, but there's a lot of things we don't know. And there's one big wild card that I think could really sort of change the way Sony does things. So what does Sony need to do for the PlayStation brand at E3 2018? What things do I want to see, and what is the big wild card for them at this event? Sit back, relax, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about Sony and PlayStation at E3 2018 and what I want to see them do.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards!
So going into E3 2018, Sony is probably the hottest brand in gaming right now. The PS4 has sold exponentially well. It is the top selling system of this generation, and I don't think anyone is going to catch up to it. Maybe the Nintendo Switch, but it's sort of a different market when you really look at it as far as the Nintendo Switch versus the PS4. Sony has a commanding lead over the Xbox One, and I do not foresee the Xbox One ever catching up. So sometimes when companies get in first place or whatever you would say, they kind of get a bit complacent, and we're not really seeing that with Sony. They are still taking risks, they are still doing some interesting things, but for E3 2018, one of the things is that it's kind of, we know what to expect. I don't know that there's going to be many surprises. Obviously, a game that we're going to see at E3 2018 from Sony is a game that's very highly anticipated, a game that a lot of people loved the first one, and they're really looking forward to playing the second one, and that is, of course, The Last of Us 2. The Last of Us really just sort of became this huge phenomenon. A lot of people thought that it was just going to be sort of compared to Uncharted, but I guess the storytelling in the game really connected with people. Me personally, I thought the game was very good. I don't think it's one of the best games of all time, but I know a lot of people do think that, and that's totally cool. So I understand why they're looking forward to The Last of Us 2, and personally, I'm looking forward to The Last of Us 2. There were definitely elements of The Last of Us that I really, really loved, and I want to see those elements expanded on. Obviously, it's going to be another very heavy story-driven cinematic experience, sort of like we saw in the first game, but the gameplay in the game was very solid for what it was. So I would like to see an expansion of The Last of Us 2, expanding the story and the universe. I think there's a lot of things that they can do with The Last of Us 2. Obviously, it's going with a darker storytelling than we saw in the first game. The first game had some dark elements, but everything we've seen from The Last of Us 2 has been really dark and really gloomy, but I like that. I think more games need to take a more, edge to them and have sort of a stance where it's like, video games are a medium for everyone, and I feel like The Last of Us 2 is definitely going to be that game, that sort of mature experience that sort of rivals cinema and whatnot. So I'm definitely curious to see more of The Last of Us 2. One game I'm not looking forward to seeing is SpiderMan on the PS4, and you might be saying to yourself, RGT, why aren't you looking forward to seeing Spider-Man? It's obvious that we will see Spider-Man, as it is a fall release for the PS4, but honestly, I'm just sick and tired of seeing this game. I want to go ahead and play the game already. We've seen Spider-Man at so many E3s now, it's like, what more do you really have to show off? I think E3 2017, they showed off plenty of Spider-Man. We saw tons of Spider-Man, and it was great. Everything we saw looked really good. Very cinematic, very gorgeous visuals, and just a really awesome looking Spider-Man experience. Definitely sort of brings me back to that Spider-Man 2 era of Spider-Man games that was actually my favorite Spider-Man game, but it looks like they sort of melded in the combat from the Batman Arkham series, which just is amazing, you know, slinging your webs around New York City as Spider-Man and stuff like that. Like, I think it's just going to be an awesome game, but I'm just so sick and tired of seeing it. I want it in my hands. Another game that we're going to see from them, of course, is Days End, and that's a game that I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that game. I'm sort of over the whole zombie thing, and, you know, with games like State of Decay 2 coming out in such a broken and buggy state on the online aspect of things, I've just played so many zombie survival games. It's just like, can this really offer me anything? Now, this game has obviously been delayed a bit, so maybe they are trying to do some things different with it, but it's not coming out until 2019. Once again, I'm sure we will see it, but I don't really want to see it. Now, there are other games that I presume Sony will show off at this event, but when you think about it, Sony's been pretty quiet about their first party lineup. Beyond the games that we already know, it's sort of a mystery as far as first party titles for the Sony platform, the PlayStation 4. Like, what else is there coming out that we don't already know about? What are the games for 2019 and beyond? Is Spider-Man the big game for fall 2018 from the first party studio? Are you going to rely on third party companies? Because there definitely are a lot of awesome third party games that are coming out in the fall of 2018, and games that have a wide range of appeal. Of course, a new Call of Duty, a new Battlefield, you'll have a Madden, you'll have all sorts of games like that. But I want to see some more IPs from Sony, first party IPs, you know, something to sort of, you know, hold people over until some of these bigger games come out. Now, one thing that's sort of a question mark with Sony's E3 for me is what they're going to do with VR, because VR has been a very polarizing thing in my opinion. I'm not a fan of VR gaming. I'm a fan of VR experiences, but I see a market for PlayStation VR that definitely exists, but I don't think it caught on quite as well as Sony wanted it to. Sales figures for the platform have been kind of quiet, and considering the system itself has sold over 80 million, I think last I heard it was like over 2 million PlayStation VR sold, so obviously the mass market isn't really gravitating towards this. So what are we doing with it? There's been a lot of third-party games that have been coming out, but as far as, once again, first-party Sony titles and really big gaming experiences, something to sort of draw in actual gamers who want to experience VR, there really hasn't been much in that, and it seems like Sony is kind of forgetting about it. And the only reason I say that is because remember the PlayStation Move? That was supposed to be the next big thing in gaming. It was essentially PlayStation 3's answer to the Wiimote, and then it sort of fizzled out, and I'm afraid that PlayStation VR might be really having that sort of same fate. And that would be a shame in my opinion, because I think it has a lot of potential. I think it's just untapped potential. Maybe the technology isn't quite there yet for these full-on gaming experiences, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with, of course, PlayStation VR. Another question mark is the handheld thing. Obviously, the Vita is on its last legs. Are we going to get any sort of tease about a subsequent successor to the PlayStation Vita, or are we just going to let that horse die and, you know, look towards the future of portable gaming? Sony themselves have said they have been looking into different things with portability. Obviously, with the success of the Nintendo Switch, portability is something that you have to factor in. You have to put that into account and take that into account. And the final thing is the wild card. And the wild card is going to be very interesting to me because I don't know anything about this game. Even though I've seen a ton of footage of the game, we still know nothing about this game. And that is Death Stranding. Obviously, Death Stranding is going to be at E3 once again. And a ton of people are hyped for the game. But I always ask them, what exactly are you hyped about? Like, the story looks interesting. Like, you can't say anything beyond the word interesting because it's just sort of all over the place. It's definitely a Kojima story that's very over the top and very sci-fi and stuff. We've seen tons of footage of cinematics and stuff, but I don't think we've actually seen any gameplay. What sort of game is this? What is this game all about? When is this game coming out? How far along in development is it? What gameplay system is it? What sort of online aspect is there going to be in it? I think Death Stranding might be the biggest biggest wild card overall at E3 2018. And I think that there's going to be a lot of negative feedback unless they show some actual gameplay, allow people to get hands-on with this game, allow journalists and people on the E3 show floor to check out this game, because it's been a long time coming. Sony has been doing that this generation. If there's one thing you've noticed, they're sort of dragging their feet when it comes to their big first-party games. Games like God of War and SpiderMan. God of War finally just came out. How many times do we see that at E3? SpiderMan still won't be out at E3 2018. It won't be out till this fall, so this is the last hurrah for Spider-Man at E3. I definitely want to see more for Death Stranding. I think people are very excited about the game because it's Hideo Kojima, and Kojima has a very solid track record, but I need to see gameplay before I'm absolutely sold on this game. You can weird me out all you like, and that'll draw me in, but you gotta keep me in with actual gameplay. So, I think Sony's gearing up for a pretty interesting, but a pretty safe E3. Like I said, they are ahead of the pack right now. They don't really have to do anything to super wow people. It's really at this point just fan service, you know, catering to that 80 million plus user base that you have on your system. The PlayStation 4 is going to continue to sell, along with the PlayStation 4 Pro. There's an excellent backlog of games to play on the system. But I think that current console owners are looking forward to new experiences, and really that's all Sony has to do. Talk about the games we know about, showcase the games we know about, throw in a couple surprises, and I think it'll be a very solid E3 for Sony this year. So those are my thoughts on what Sony needs to do at E3 2018. Pretty much stay the course, you know, stay par for the course. Just keep going in a positive direction, but show some games, show some actual gameplay, and get gamers excited for the rest of the year and beyond. Well, that's all I really have to say about Sony's press conference. Let me know in the comments section down below what you expect to see from Sony. Do you think there'll be any big bombshells, maybe any IPs returning that we haven't been thinking about? Could there be a new Jak and Daxter or Ratchet and Clank? Let me know in the comments section down below, and thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There's going to be all sorts of crazy E3 stuff once E3 starts on this channel. Plus, I'm always doing reviews of PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch stuff, retro stuff, a lot of stuff here on the world of RGT 85. And if you really enjoyed this video, be sure to check out all the links in the description box down below. We got Patreon, t-shirts, social media, all sorts of ways to keep up to date with the ever-growing world of RGT 85. And I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.
RGT 85. RGT 85. RGT 85. RGT